Welcome to Debt Free in 30, the show where every week we talk to experts about debt, money, and personal finance. That's exactly what we're going to do today. I've got a great guest on the line, so let's get started. Who are you? Where do you work? What do you do?
Hi Doug, my name is Sarah Milton and I am an account manager with ClearPoint Benefits. Essentially, my job is to get people excited about their money, which is fundamentally what I'm passionate about. So my job is financial education. I get to go into companies who have group retirement plans, educate the employees on the plans, and be a resource for them if they have questions about retirement planning, debt management, money management. It's essentially everything I love to do as a financial advisor, with no requirement to sell anybody anything in order to eat, which makes me very happy.
Wow. So we've had a number of guests on the show we've addressed this exact question, that what most advisors out there are our salespeople. And in fact, it's my belief that everybody is biased. We all have to eat. In your case, it's not a direct relationship then. It's obviously your bosses want, things to keep going on. But when you're meeting with one of the employees that you work with, all you personally care about is giving them good advice because you're not selling them anything. They're already part of the plan, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. And technically, I don't even really want to give people advice. I want to give them information that allows them to make a decision on their own. Because my belief is that if I give advice, I'm creating a dependence. And when I'm servicing 85 companies and all the employees within those companies, the last thing I need is 2,000 people who need to call me every time they want to change their investment decisions.
You don't want to create a dependence. So this is the whole thing about, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime or something
Absolutely.
like that. And so that's really what you're trying to do. Now, I became aware of you through some of your writing. Your stuff is peppered across the internet because you've done a lot of writing as well. Is that correct?
That's true. I write a weekly post for retirehappy.ca, which is one of Globe and Mail's best personal finance blogs, I believe, in 2012. And I'm about to become a published author.
Oh.
So I just finished a book that I co-wrote with Jim Yee, who also created Retire Happy. And that's called Take Control of Your Money.
In the show notes, I will put links to everything we've talked about, both the retirehappy.ca website as well as this book, and we'll see if we can't just turn it into a bestseller then for you.
That would be awesome.
That would be totally cool. So I got a whole bunch of things I'd like to talk to you about, but why don't we start with the whole education end of it, which is what you were just discussing. So tell me, as a person who you know nothing about, where do my attitudes about money come from? Why is it that I think the way I think? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. And I think the psychology of money is something that's not talked about enough when it comes to finances. Because the reality is that everything we've ever heard, seen, or experienced in relationship to money is what influences our ability to earn, hold, and grow it. So if you grew up in an environment where money is difficult and stressful, and you believe that money is difficult and complicated, and perhaps that wealthy people are arrogant idiots, it stands to reason that you wouldn't put a lot of time and energy into something that's difficult and complicated, and you're not going to work your butt off to become an arrogant idiot. So a lot of times we create our own barriers and we self-sabotage along the way.
So we create our own reality to a certain extent then. So
absolutely.
Okay, so let's say I grew up in a home where what you just said is true, that I believe that all rich people are arrogant idiots. Mm-hmm. Or I guess I grew up in a home where I believe the opposite. I don't know what the opposite of that would be, but I have some different viewpoint. So what does that mean to me then? What do I have to do as a consumer, as a person armed with that knowledge?
So the first step to change is awareness. So if you're aware that you might have a belief that's stopping you getting where you want to go, I say you should look for reasons that you're wrong. So if I believe that wealthy people are arrogant and disrespectful, I need to look for examples of wealthy people who aren't those things. Wealthy people who are generous or philanthropic or have achieved their wealth doing something that mirrors my values. I think as human beings, we have a hard time sometimes dealing with the fact that we might be wrong, but when we can get comfortable knowing that we don't know everything, there's a lot of opportunity for growth there.
So are you saying I don't know everything? Is that, we'll edit that part out because that can't be, that is a huge shock. Yeah, we'll definitely edit that out. So, okay, I have to start by being aware of what my preconceived notions and biases are.
Mm-hmm.
And then what? So I realize that, yeah, okay, I've got this attitude towards money that only rich people have money and all rich people are bad.
Mm-hmm.
If I can find some people, rich is perhaps a bad word, but people who are successful who aren't bad people,
mm-hmm.
then that allows me to then take the next step, which is what? Where do I go from there?
So after awareness comes understanding. So understanding how what you believe is impacting your life, either in a positive or a negative way, and then deciding to take an action to counteract that. So for example, when I was growing up, my dad is extremely good with money, but he grew up in a generation that just doesn't talk about it. So I understood the principles of you don't borrow money, you don't get into debt. But at the same time, I'm looking around our house, I'm seeing the secondhand furniture, I'm seeing the super hard work, and I'm thinking, well, you know what? I could just, charge some money to Visa and I could have all the great things that I wanted. It wasn't until down the road that I realized the secondhand furniture was a choice because they didn't want everything wrecked while the kids were small. As soon as we moved out, they had great furniture.
Cool.
And a new kitchen.
Yeah.
But it's understanding that money was never very important to me until somebody pointed out that I could do far more good in the world if I had money than if I didn't. And that resonated with me. That's my driver to build wealth, is that I can create a better life for my niece, for my nephew, for other people if I have more money available to me.
So your attitude towards money really informs your decisions. If I think money is a bad thing in and of itself, then I guess either I don't want to have it, or I want to spend a lot of it, or as you said, I want to borrow a lot of it because it doesn't have any real value to me. And I'm assuming you're in the camp that a massive amount of debt is not a good thing.
Absolutely.
And and so what advice do you give people then who are starting out with a massive amount of debt? Perhaps they've got student loans from when they were in school. Perhaps they've just had that bad attitude to money that you just talked about, that, hey, I want it, I'm going to charge it, and who cares what the consequences are? So when you encounter someone like that, what's the thought process you go through with them?
So for me, and I think part of what makes me a good advisor when it comes to debt management is that I have been down that debt path and I have fallen into some pretty large holes and I have dug myself out. So I understand exactly how you can get into that situation, but I also know that it's totally possible to get yourself out. But I think the first step is understanding how you got there in the first place, because life throws curves, life is unpredictable, things happen, but I know from my experience, the hole I fell into wouldn't have been nearly as deep had I done things differently in the lead up to that. So, if I'd had more of a reserve, if I had more of a contingency fund, if I paid more attention, then I wouldn't have been hit quite as hard as I was.
So understanding knowledge is always the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so you said, having been someone who's been through this in the past, okay, what's next then? So, okay, I get it. Maybe it was through no fault of my own. I got laid off. The company closed down. I got sick. I wasn't able to work for 6 months, so I had to use credit to survive. I've now got a bunch of debt. So what's my thought process now then to try to recover from that?
So then it's about setting a goal and coming up with a plan. So if the first thing to do is to know your situation. So you have to be able to take a good hard look at your situation and know exactly how much debt you have. And then you've got to look at your situation and say, well, how much money do I have coming in every month? How much money do I have coming out? And hopefully the difference between those two numbers is positive. If it's negative, your first step is you got to figure out a way to either cut your expenses or make more money.
Yeah, as I say to people, you're not the government of Canada. You can't spend more than comes in forever and ever. You can't print money. So until you get that budget under control, then nothing else is going to be possible. So, okay, that's very good information. I'd like to talk about a bunch of other things, but let's take a quick break. I'm here with Sarah Milton. We'll be right back on Debt Free in 30.
You're listening to Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
We're back on Debt Free in 30. My guest today is Sarah Milton, and we've been talking about the psychology of money, and I'd like to explore that a little bit further. And perhaps we can take a step back, Sarah, and you can tell us about some of the influences and what's got your thinking to where it is today. And I assume you spent most of your career reading everything I've written on the internet, every blog I've written, and that's probably been the most profound influence on you. Is that correct?
You have stuff on the internet?
Oh yeah, okay. So it isn't me that's profoundly helped you out. So what have been your influences then? Where did you come to the thinking that you've got today?
I think my grounding in finances came initially from the book The Wealthy Barber by Dave Chilton. And probably the book I would credit with turning my own life around would be a book called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. And I read that one probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and it literally changed my life. And it's always hard to say that because it sounds like such a cliche, but honestly, it's such a different reality now compared to what it was.
And so I have to admit that I'm totally ignorant here. I am not familiar with this book. And I ask a lot of my guests, what books do they recommend? And a lot of people have mentioned The Wealthy Barber, David Chilton, of course, who lives here in Kitchener, where I am today. You're in Edmonton, so you're a little farther away from where he is. But this book I'm not as familiar with. So give us the background. What's the basic concept? What is it that you learned from that book?
Secrets of the Millionaire Mind really focuses on the psychology of money. And I would guess the key concepts to that, A, is that everybody has a money personality, and B, everybody has a money thermostat. So the idea is that the way you handle your money is influenced by your money personality, and the amount of money you're able to hold and grow is influenced by that money thermostat.
So a money personality, I have no idea what that means then. So are there a number of different money personalities, or what are we talking about there?
There are 4 different money personalities, and this information is based on research that was done by a lady called Olivia Mellon, and she identified 4 different money personalities. So the first one is the spender, the person who loves to spend their money. These are the people who tend to have best friends named Visa and MasterCard.
Cool.
They love to spend. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got the saver, the people who love to save, are very comfortable saving, but often the challenge with being a saver is that you're not very comfortable with taking risk with your money, so your money tends to grow in a checking account versus an investment account. The avoider is one of the more common money personalities. These are the people who would prefer not to have anything to do with their finances. They never know how much money is in their bank account. Their bills tend to stack up in a pile on top of the microwave or in a drawer. A couple of days before payday, they're paying for things with their fingers crossed because they're not 100% sure whether it's going to go through or not. And the 4th personality is the rarest one, and that's the money monk, the person who doesn't feel right about having money when other people don't. So they tend to give their money away versus keep it for themselves.
That's very interesting. And in my business, I mean, I'm a bankruptcy trustee, so I run into a lot of people who are avoiders.
Yeah.
Many times over the years, I've had people come in to see me, and they've got a stack of envelopes that they haven't opened.
Absolutely.
And so I asked them, so how much money do you owe? I don't really know. I don't want to know. It's all here. And so we literally open the credit card statements and figure it out. So going back to the discussion we had in the first segment, the first step is to understand who I am. I guess the starting point then is, what is my money personality? Which of those 4 categories do I place myself in? And I think if we're honest, it's not that hard to figure out which category we're in.
No, not
This is
really.
not a complicated thing.
No.
So once I determine, okay, yeah, you know what? I am an avoider. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to deal with it. I just hope it will all go away. What's next then?
So then it becomes, that's your awareness piece, and then the next piece becomes understanding how it impacts you. And then it's about making a choice. So for me, I was a classic avoider. I think I started out maybe originally as a saver and grew into being an avoider just because of circumstance. But for me, it was understanding that if I just stepped up and paid attention, that was what I need to do in order to turn my life around. And once I started doing that and I started seeing the results, then it becomes a lot easier to continue that behavior because you're seeing positive reinforcement all the time.
That's an interesting point, because if I don't see results, I'm not going to do it. And that is true in every area of life, right? If I'm going to start a new diet because I need to lose weight and I'm on this diet for 2 weeks and I don't lose any weight, I'm probably not going to stay on it for the third week. And it's the same with money, I assume, too, right?
Yeah.
And so as the classic avoider, what kind of results was it that you were starting to see? Was it cutting your spending? Was it, paying off debt? What were the types of tangible results you were able to see?
For a start, there was a lot less fear. So I think when you don't really know exactly what's going on, but you know that it's not good, you don't want to look at your credit card statements. You don't want to look at your bank account because you don't know what it's going to be like, and chances are it's not going to be a very happy thing. Once I had a plan and I knew exactly how much was coming in, how much was going out, and I was managing it, then there were fewer surprises, and any extra large bills that would have completely knocked me to the floor beforehand could be dealt with because I had that little bit of a cushion. And once you get comfortable, now I'm happy to check my bank account and look at it because I know that there's money in it.
So the most important benefit for you then was up in your head.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was reducing stress because you knew you had a plan. And that's very interesting because, I'm an accountant. So if you ask me, I'm going to say, well, the benefit is the average interest rate I'm paying on my debt dropped from this to this, and my savings came from this to this, and my bank. I would give you a numerical answer. But for most people, what's much more important than that is, getting back to the whole psychology of it, what's going on in my brain.
Yeah.
And being able to reduce the stress is, and that comes from knowledge and having a plan, is what you just said, right?
Absolutely.
So that's the money personality, and I think that's easy to understand, at least on a basic level. What's this whole concept of a money thermostat then? What is that all about?
The money thermostat is the idea that there's a certain amount of money that you're comfortable having. So you might be comfortable having $2,000 inside your bank account. When you have less than $2,000, chances are you'll rein in your spending until you're back to that $2,000. But if you've got more than $2,000, there's a really good chance you're going to spend yourself down until you get there. If you're comfortable being $3,000 in overdraft and you're only $1,500 overdrawn, in your head you feel like you've still got $1,500 to spend. It's the reason that most lottery winners go broke within about 3 years.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And so do I need to adjust my thermostat then? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. So if you're thinking about the whole idea of money being to build wealth, to grow, you have to be comfortable with being that person who, heading into retirement, has $500,000, $750,000, $1 million plus inside your retirement account. And all your perceptions about the kind of people who have $500,000 or $1 million tie into your own ability. So we tend to get to a point where we're comfortable, we plateau, and then you need to readjust and kind of reset yourself. So set a new goal.
And do you agree with tricking myself? So let's say my thermostat is set at $2,000 in my bank account. That's my number. And so like you say, if I have more than that, oh, well, I got lots of money, I can spend it. If I have less, then I'm going to adjust. But really what I need to do is begin building funds for retirement. I need to be generating extra money to pay off debt, whatever. Would it therefore make sense to trick myself by having a second bank account, a savings account, for example, so that as soon as the balance gets to $1,800 in my account, I move it over, I don't see it, it's out of the way, maybe it goes into a TFSA or a GIC or something, but it's gone. And that way I always see the number that's going to motivate me to do the right thing. Or is that cheating?
No, I don't think that's cheating at all. I think a lot of success in finances comes from doing things that your brain's not totally aware of. So, for example, saving through a workplace savings plan, because it comes straight off your check, it never hits your bank account, it just grows in a little space that you're not really aware of, or putting your contingency fund in with a different institution so that it's not linked to your debit card. You can't accidentally spend your emergency fund because there's a great shoe sale at the mall.
There's a great shoe sale at the mall?
Not
is
that
it on
that's
now?
ever happened to me at all. No.
See, and I'm a guy, so that I just don't understand that concept. But although I do have 57 different kinds of shoes to go running, so I guess you're exactly right. So to wrap up this segment, then the practical advice that you're giving people is specifically what? Is it a question of awareness? Is it a question of setting a goal, a target, a plan? Like what's the takeaway piece here?
I think it's understanding how your beliefs and your habits could be sabotaging your best efforts. You know, we have great intentions. If you're in debt, you know that you really should be out of debt. But sometimes you just have to find those reasons, those motivators that are strong enough to get you out. You know, for somebody who's quitting smoking, until they decide that they really want to quit, that's the point where they're able to quit and make it stick. If they're not 100% committed to the goal, then the chances are they're going to lapse. And it's exactly the same with your finances. If you're committed to your goal and you understand why it is for you that you're trying to achieve that goal, then your chances of success are much greater than if you're just doing it because you think you should.
Perfect. That's a great way to wrap it up. I'll be back to wrap it up. Thanks, Sarah. We're here on Debt Free in 30.
You're listening to Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Welcome back. It's time for the 30-second recap of what we discussed today. My guest today was Sarah Milton, and she gave a great explanation of the 4 money personalities and explained how we each have a money thermostat. To improve your money management skills, understand which money personality you are, and then adjust your money thermostat to an appropriate level for your unique circumstances. That's the 30-second recap of what we discussed today. So, what's my take on Sarah's message? I found the concept of money personalities and thermostats quite interesting. I'm an accountant, and I tend to look at everything in number terms. Her approach of focusing more on the psychology of money is a great idea, and I think if you have any money challenges, it's a great place to start. That's our show for today. Please subscribe to this show on iTunes and visit hoyes.com, that's HOYES.com, for full show notes. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.